Now we're on to section 1.7, where we're going to change our adding and subtracting of fractions to mixed numbers. And I think the easiest way to do these is to leave them as mixed numbers for the most part. The software sometimes tells you to change them to improper fractions, but then your numbers are bigger. And remember, we like to keep our numbers smaller. So turn on my writing screen. Okay, so I like to stack them vertically. So this is going to be 17 minus 14 and 5/11. Well, I've got no 11ths right here, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I have no 11ths. And I start in the right-hand column, same as if you had, 17 minus 9. You start with 9 from 7, but you can't take 9 from 7, so you have to borrow from the 1, and that becomes a 0. And that 1 was in the tens column, so you borrowed 1 from the tens column, which was really 10. So you add that 10 to the 7 by putting a little 1 there to make it 17. So really what you did is you added 10 and had 17 there, which is what you started with. That wasn't a very good example. But anyway, we need to borrow here. We're starting off with a hard one. So we're going to borrow 1 whole from the 17, and that becomes a 16. And we're going to add that whole to the 0/11. And since we are adding it to 11ths, we want to add 11ths. And we're adding 1 whole, so that means 11/11. So 11/11 plus 0 is 11/11. Now I can subtract. 11 minus 5 is 6/11. 16 minus 14 is 2. Okay, so I just want to reiterate what we did here. 16 and 11/11 is the same thing as 17. So we just borrowed 1 whole in the form of 11/11. You just want to use that same denominator that you have here and put it over itself. Add it to this numerator to give you your new numerator, and then you can do the subtraction. So let's enter that and see if we can start with a little simpler one next. 2 and 6/11. Again, don't hesitate to rewind and watch again, watch again, watch again. This one they've already set up vertically for us, and the denominators are the same. So this is a much easier problem than the one we just did. So let's go ahead and do that one. So my denominators are the same, so I'm just going to have some ninths here. 7 minus 2 is 5/9, and 9 minus 5 is 4, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So that one was super easy. The thing that you have to pay attention to is this fraction part. Can you reduce it? If you can, you should. So be sure to check on that. Remember, you factor and cancel common factors. So 14 and 5/9. Oops, sorry. Submit. All right, let's see if we can find one in between. Here's one that's kind of in between. This one's a little easier than the first one because we can write in here that we have 0/9 on the bottom. All right, so 4/9 minus 0/9 is 4/9. 8 minus 3 is 5. 3 minus 2 is 1. So super easy, 15 and 4/9. And I cannot reduce the 4/9. So that's the final answer to that one. 15 and 4/9. So just remember to stack these vertically and get a common denominator if you need it. So far, we have not needed to find a common denominator. So I'll do one more like this, and then I'll look for one that requires a common denominator. 25 and 5/11. We're going to have to borrow for this one, so that's good to go over again. We already have a common denominator, so we don't need to worry about that, but we cannot take, this should have been a 5. 8 from 5 and stay positive. So I'm going to have to borrow from the 25. I'm going to add the one that I borrowed to the 5/11ths. So it was 11ths. So I need to, again, I don't know why they're making us play with 11 so much, but there's the one that I borrowed at 11/11ths. So that ends up giving me 5 and 11 is 16/11ths. Now I can subtract. 16 minus 8 is 8. And 24 minus 7 is 17. Yep, 17 and 8/11ths. Oops. All right, word problem. We're in the addition and subtraction, so chances are you're either going to add these two or subtract them. So read to find out. Sherry takes this amount of time. Joaquin takes that amount of time. The time, calculate the difference. So difference means subtract. And this guy, Sherry, takes a lot longer than Joaquin, so that number is going to go on top. 4 7/8 minus 1 5/6. So now we finally have one that is not a common denominator. We need a common denominator between 8 and 6. So we know how to do this. We've done this lots over the past few sections. Hopefully, I'm going quickly, but hopefully I'm right. So this 3 2s is 8 times 3 is 24. So that is right. So I'm going to change that to 24ths. And when I subtract, I'm going to get some 24ths. I build my house. So 8 times 3 gave me 24, so I need to do 7 times 3. That's 21. 6 times 4, so 5 times 4, 20. I can use my multiplication table to help me figure these out if I need to. And now, fortunately, I don't have to borrow. 21 minus 20 is 1/24, and 4 minus 1 is 3. So that's the difference between those two amounts of time, 3 and 1/24. I have to repeat it to myself because I will forget it between clicking off of that problem and back to this one. All right, subtraction, common denominator. So let's do that one. So common denominator between 3 and 4. Does it go in? Goes in twice. Does it go in? Goes in once. Drop that 1. Goes in once. Done. 4 times 3 is 12. So 3 times 4, so 1 times 4. 4 times 3, so 1 times 3. And I'm subtracting, so 4 minus 3 is 1/12. And 39 minus 9 is 30. Hopefully this is helping you see it's not too hard. That said, if you need to spend a lot of time practicing and reviewing this, that is completely understandable. These videos are to help you after you've done the learn and before you start doing the practice. So you've already kind of learned their methods of doing these. I'm just giving you quick tips for how to make it easier to do without a calculator. All right, here we're adding. I'm going to stack them vertically, and I have to find a common denominator. 36 and 1/2, 42 and 6/11. I'm adding. So 2 and 11 don't have any common factors, so you're going to multiply them together to get your common denominator. So I'm adding, so I don't have to worry about borrowing. 11 and 12 is 23. And 6 and 2 is 8. 3 and 4 is 7. Now, pay attention here because this guy right here is improper. If all you had was 23 over 22, that would equal 1 and 1/22, right? 22 goes into 23. 1 complete time with 1 left over. 1 and 1/22. So that's what that part is equivalent to, but you still have that 78. So you've got to add that 78 and that 1 to get 79 and 122. Hopefully that makes sense. 79, 122. All right, so I feel like we've mostly gone over all the different types of problems, but I'll skip through to make sure. This is, you've got to find a common denominator and you're adding. Common denominator and you're subtracting, so you might need to borrow depending on your numerators. You're adding and you need to find a common denominator. Go ahead and write it vertically. Same thing here, subtracting. All right, again, we're probably going to need to add or subtract these two mixed numbers, right, based on what section we're in. So let's read it and see. A rectangle has a length of 5 7/10 and a width, centimeters, and a width of 3 5/8 centimeters. So as soon as I see the word rectangle, I usually draw a diagram to kind of help me visualize what's happening. So the length is 5 7/10. So that means this guy is 5 7/10. And the width is 3 5/8. So that's what my rectangle looks like. And it asks, what is the perimeter? Okay, so your formula sheet tells you a formula for a perimeter of a rectangle. So the perimeter of a rectangle is just the distance around the outside. So you can add up those four numbers, or you can double each of those numbers and then add those sums together. So that's what this perimeter formula indicates. You can double the length, double the width, and add them together. So you're going to multiply by 2, each one of those two numbers, then you add your answers together. For something as simple as this one, it feels easier for you guys to just add those four numbers together. So I'm going to add the 5 7/10 and the 5 7/10 first. So I've got a common denominator. It gives me 14/10. That's an improper fraction. So this 14 over 10 is 1 4/10. So that 1 goes with that 10 to give me 11, and I'm going to reduce this to 2/5. You should be able to reduce that. I'm not going through how to do it because we've done that in previous sections. But if you need a review, you're going to go back to 1.1, 1.2, something like that for how to get from here to here. All right, now I'm going to add 3 5/8, 3 5/8. So that's 6 10/8. That becomes 1 2/8. So that's 7. 2/8 reduces to 1/4. So now I need to add 11 2/5 and 7 1/4. Let's see if I have room. Common denominator, you use your ladder method to find out that your common denominator is 20. So this was times 4, so times 4 is 8. Times 5, so times 5 is 5. 8 and 5 is 13. And 11 7 is 18. So that should be your final answer, 18 13 20ths. 18 13 20ths. And it is. And that was the last problem on that section. So hopefully that was helpful. Good luck.